he repeated to himself. Her. The girl everyone had told him was dead. Chapter 1. 20 hours earlier. The New Year's Eve fireworks illuminated the city. Shrieking arrows shot into the sky and exploded in an array of multicolored patterns. Each eruption varied in strength and intensity. Over the last few minutes, the explosions had become more and more frequent. A heavy mist had drifted across the fjord and lay like a lid over the harbour in front of Oslo City Hall. The drop in temperature had forced the spectators to button up their coats and tighten their scarves. They huddled together in the snow, laughing and shouting. Emma Ramm was well wrapped up in a thick winter coat. She was wearing wellies with 2 pairs of woolen socks, but she was not part of the crowd milling around in the square. The New Year's revellers staring up at the sky, holding their phones out in front of them. Neither was she among those frantically trying to get in touch with their friends and family moments before midnight. Instead, she was making her way through the crowd, studying those she passed, looking for a sign, for anything that would indicate whether they were actually there to celebrate, or if they were there for another reason. She was unsure, however, what the signs for that would even look like. It had been a little over half an hour since Emma had left Irene's flat, halfway through a quarrel she had been having with Casper, who had suddenly decided that he didn't want to go to the annual New Year's party in Amager after all, as he'd rather start the new year in bed next to her. He could not understand why she absolutely had to be down by City Hall when the clock struck 12. She didn't even like fireworks. "I just have to," she had replied. Casper had laughed at her vague and childish answer. He was grumpy by that point as well, so had replied, "Fine, but you can go by yourself. I'm not going out just to get cold and wet." "I'll go," Martina had chimed in. "I want to see the fireworks. Can't I go with you, Auntie? Please." Emma had smiled, but shook her head. She didn't want to have to explain to her niece that it might be too dangerous for a small child. And for adults too, for that matter. Lots of people end up ringing in the new year in A&E with a firework-related injury. But there was another reason. Over the last few months, Emma had played a major part in exposing what the media had called the Countdown murders. In fact, she had almost been one of the victims. The killer had intended to make her murder the grand finale to his countdown. So as New Year's Eve approached, and with that the public countdown to midnight, she had grown anxious that someone else might be inspired to attempt something similar. Emma had confided in her therapist about this irrational fear. He had nodded and said that he understood her logic, but that there was no reason to believe something like that was going to happen again. Emma had tried to convince herself that her thoughts were just ridiculous speculations, but the idea had already taken hold and had only gained momentum. Her mind kept returning to the huge firework display that was always held on the square between the harbour and Oslo's City Hall, where thousands of people gathered every New Year's Eve. Her therapist had eventually suggested that she should go down to the harbour that night, that she should tackle her fear head-on, see for herself that nothing bad was going to happen, and then learn from that experience. In fact, in the end, she had decided to leave the whole thing be, but earlier that evening, an almost claustrophobic panic had washed over her, a sudden fear of what Casper might do once the clock turned 12. Not that she thought he would get down on one knee and propose or anything. They had only known each other for 8 months. But it wasn't out of the realms of possibility that he might confess his love for her. Emma was still not quite sure how she felt about him, other than thinking that he was a nice guy, who she enjoyed spending time with, so long as they lived in separate cities and didn't see.